Greetings, negotiators. Welcome back. So I've already done an episode on negotiation and preparation and getting consent. But it was kind of only covering maybe a more extreme case of some really difficult things. I want to probably do multiple follow-up videos in the same category, including this one, where we talk about maybe some of the more normal cases where you're negotiating for more normal everyday things that you need your kids to do for their health, for your sanity, for your home's cleanliness, things like that. This is going to be an incomplete list, and I'm totally ready and willing to do as many of these videos in this category as we need. So if you have specific topics where you think you could use some help in this area, let us know. And I will, like I said, I'm happy to create follow-up videos where we go into more depth on this because it is such a deep topic. It is something that you will use every day in almost every situation, around every interaction that you have with your loved ones, especially those in your home, that it's kind of it's a wide topic. There's many things to talk about. So we already talked about kind of the extreme thing in the first video. Let's kind of go to the opposite end. And then as I go through these little topics, I'll probably branch out onto diatribes about the principles at play. So some of the most little things, and some of these are going to be examples just for my family. My kids enjoy going outside. And we live in a big city, so going outside is not necessarily something that can be done without supervision safely. So we can't always go outside. And so what that does is it makes something that some kids might not want. Some kids might not even care about going outside. Our kids do. And so what this does is it takes this thing called going outside and it turns it into something that we need to keep on our list of bargaining chips. Now, I talked about bargaining points a lot in the last video and how you should kind of always be on the lookout for them and always, keeping a running list of things that your kids desire so that you can use them in negotiations. Now, before people take this to the extreme, I want to talk about the other side. When I say keep a stack of bargaining chips, I don't mean to transform your relationship with your family members into a tit-for-tat constant negotiation for every little thing that anybody wants. That is annoying. That's not how real life works anyway. And you're the parent. And so like the default sort of onus is on you to provide the kid the thing that they want. The things that they want and desire, and to provide them fun and entertainment and a lot of this stuff for free because you created them. You made the decision to bring them into the world. So then to like negotiate over every little thing would not really be right or good parenting. So you shouldn't try and make everything into a bargain, into a deal. But you should also be on the lookout for the really important stuff, maybe the stuff that they really desire or the stuff that you really desire so that you can enter into negotiations that everyone wins. That's the whole goal of this whole process, is to get win-wins out of what is normally conflicts between family members. So that's the first thing I wanted to say. Don't turn everything into a tit for tat. That's not what I'm suggesting that you do when I say keep lists or, keep a list in your mind of things that are important to them. That's just, sort of being active in the relationship. I should know what things are important to my wife, and she should know what's important for me, and I should know what's important to my kids. Not always for the purposes of bargaining and extracting every bit of what action out of them that I can possibly get. Not always for that purpose, but it's helpful when I need something that they are not really super interested in giving me. One of the things you discover when you're negotiating is that you really have to get out of your own head and not project the things that are important to you on the other people. So for certain kids, like I said, like going out for a walk is a huge deal. For us, it's not much at all. There's an inequality in value on this activity called going for a walk. And herein lies the magic of sort of capitalism and free trade and the free market and negotiating as equals, is that is how many things are. Anytime you buy something from anyone, what's happening is that you are valuing what the other person has more than the money that you have, and they are valuing the money that you have more than the thing that they have. And so when you trade, both people obtain more. They now have more value in their possessions than they did previously. So through free trade and through recognizing each other's asymmetric desires, you're able to make everyone happier, make the overall value that everyone holds go up. Win-wins is what we're talking about here. And so it's important that like when you recognize something that somebody else desires, that you try and get an idea for what level they value that thing at. Does it look like something they don't care about, or something that's really, really important to them, or somewhere in between? And then also put your value on it. Wow, it's like 105 degrees outside today in Texas, and I really don't want to go outside, so I have a strong negative value to that. Or I love going outside too, especially I get to play with my kids, so that's actually a triple plus sign in my column, things like that. So be more aware of this is what I'm saying. And also realize that everybody's different. The value is subjective, as it were. So what that means is, like I said, some kids value going outside a lot. Some kids might really hate going outside, and getting them to go on a family walk with you might be something that you'd have to bargain for rather than the other way around. And that's totally fine and normal and human and to be expected, because value is subjective to everybody. So the things that I'm telling you, I'm using as examples based on my kids and my experience, are going to be totally different from your kids and what they desire and what they hate. Their wants and needs and the things that they hate and dislike. Also, knowing the difference in values, like my kids for some reason really like having spoons and plates of their preferred color. We have some plastic bowls and stuff and spoons, and we have a set, and there's some blue ones and some like purple ones, right? And wouldn't you know it, my little girl prefers purple and my little boy prefers blue. We won't go into that, but like we bought this stuff without realizing that would be a desire of theirs, but it became a strong desire of theirs. And so we sat down and we had an opportunity to sort of make a deal around this. Now, here's where it comes in. Like, the basis of making any deal, first of all, is recognizing who owns who, self-ownership. You own you, they own them. And also to recognize the ownership of everything else involved in the deal making, in the negotiation. Who owns the house? Who owns the toys? Who owns in this case, the bowls and spoons? Who owns the internet connection? Who owns the, air conditioning, the windows, whether they're open or shut? Establish the ownership of everything first. And I haven't done a video on how to handle property ownership in the family yet, aside from the very first talk I did at Acapulco yet. That video definitely needs to come. But you get the idea. Before you can negotiate over things, you have to establish who is in control of what property. And in this case, we purchased the bowls and the spoons. They were our property. So we sort of had an ability here. We had a moment that we could use to link to something that is important to us that we can get out of the deal. Okay, guys, well, we will make sure that, you only get to use our purple bowls and you get to use our blue bowls. And again, the value is totally asymmetric. We literally do not care what color of the stuff gets used at all, but they care greatly. What we care about is teeth brushing. And so for negotiating for something like this, it's sort of like you can just kind of go easy, go along, get along, be sort of chill about things that, are important. It is important to have priorities like teeth brushing. And this kind of goes to something I talked about previously, which is like this time pressure. It's like, okay, we know that as parents, it is our job to make sure our children brush their teeth. And so a lot of parents will like take that issue on and they'll like confront it directly and immediately and sort of desire and expect to achieve resolution on the conflict right then. Whereas if you calm down, if you have a little patience, if you realize that their teeth are not going to rot out of their head within a 24-hour period, and maybe you can kind of slow down and give yourself time to think about ways to negotiate for teeth brushing, then you can broach the topic. You can do the normal stuff where you, like, let's take teeth brushing as an example. You sit them down, you're like, hey, do you know why we brush our teeth? And you talk about the little germies that, you know, grow on your teeth, and they will eat away at your teeth slowly and give your teeth owies. And again, regulate the language up or down depending on the age of the people you're talking to. Obviously, that goes for all of my videos, and I'll probably have to keep saying it, but you know, describe the reason, teach them the reason behind why we do these things, rather than just order them to and say, you know, the worst words that you can say to your children ever, because I said so. Like, that is counterproductive and counter to all of the principles that we're working for here. Those words should never, ever leave your mouth. So you instruct them. That's the first thing you should do, is teach them why we brush our teeth. Why is that important? And if they still don't really understand, like maybe the little germs that eat your teeth away or whatever, then get on the internet and show them pictures of, you know, teeth that have been eaten away, and show them like where it can go, and then show them maybe pictures or video of how the toothpaste goes about cleaning the germs off and keeping your mouth clean. And how cool it is that not only does it get rid of all the germs, but it kind of tastes, you know, some people think it tastes like minty fresh too. So it's kind of fun to do that. And then you get to, you know, make it fun, make it sound neat. And then you get to, you know, get a bunch of water in your mouth, swish it around. That's kind of fun too, right? Swishing the water around, swish, swish, swish. And then, you know, make it fun and not just like a chore. So educate them on why it's important. Show them how it can go wrong, and then make the process of doing the thing fun. That's kind of step one. Now, let's say they're still sort of resistive to doing it. Well, now, rather than continuing to push after we've done the education and we've taken the time to make the points we needed to make, rather than continuing to push until we get to the point where, okay, well, we can't go to bed until you brush your teeth tonight. And so you just have to do it. Just do it. And like applying that time pressure to a debate that, you know, honestly, a day without brushing your teeth is not going to like make their teeth instantly rot out of their head. So sort of realize the reality of the time pressures involved, because as parents, like I said, it automatically sort of feels like when we start these encounters that we need to win, because if we don't win, then we're bad parents. Well, I'm going to tell you, if you don't win on the toothbrushing thing for a day or even 2 days, you're not a bad parent. You're just, as long as you're spending time actually working on the problem and thinking through it and coming up with ways to bargain, which is the next part that we were talking about here, right? Is you spend that 2 days just quietly observing, and maybe you have more chats with them to educate and to remind them, and maybe you look at more pictures or something like that, but you're also just waiting for an opportunity. And you'd be surprised how often these opportunities present themselves. And they do present themselves to you if your eyes are open enough to see them. And so what happened in this case is that they're really interested in certain colors of bowls, and we really don't care about that, but they're really interested in it. Well, you have bowls, which are sort of linked to food, and food is linked to teeth brushing. So we have a sort of a holistic scenario here where we can link it all together and teach the lesson and get what we want and have them get what they want and achieve that win-win. Well, hey, here's the deal I'll offer you. How about this deal? And that's how you should say it. I've got an idea for a deal. How about this? I will make sure that you only get to use the purple bowls, and then you only get to use the blue bowls if, after you use them to eat food, you guys go brush your teeth to get rid of the germs that are growing after you've eaten the food so that your teeth stay clean. So you guys get what you want. You get to use your bowl, the bowls that you really prefer. And then you also make sure to keep your teeth clean. Like, that would make me happy. Does that make you guys happy? Does that sound like a good deal? Those are the kind of questions you should ask. And they'll either be like, okay, that sounds like a fair deal. Once you get their consent to a deal, it's like, it has power for the human species. There's, even in little children, somehow, some way, there's some magic to getting the consent. And I talked about this previously in the sort of hard, difficult hospital situation. Once they've given their consent and agreed to a deal, the level of problems and fighting that you have to do with them around that topic virtually disappear. And there's some caveats to that, right? To make sure that deals mean anything to your children, you have to keep your deals. And I don't mean like just sort of lightly keep their deals. Oh yeah, I agreed to this, but it's a kid, he doesn't know, whatever. No. Like, you need to treat these things like contracts. Like, when you make these deals, you need to specify what you're getting, what they're getting, how it's going to work, and then what's going to happen if you break the deal, what's going to happen if they break the deal, every single time. And then take this stuff seriously, because if you don't take the deal seriously, then they won't. And now you've sort of regressed in your parenting model back to a situation where nobody does what they say they're going to do, and the only tool you have remaining is to return to the spanking or to the force or to the control. So the way you get them to keep their deals is by keeping yours, and also pointing it out that, like, when they break a deal, the first thing you say, maybe this is a separate video, this one's getting kind of long, so we'll save like what happens when you break deals for another one. But that's kind of the idea. So you recognize the time pressure, the reality of the time pressure in a situation. You keep a watchful eye for moments and opportunities to present themselves in which you can bargain. And it's like you're constantly looking for good deals for the things that they resist. And then you keep your deals and you expect them to keep their deals. And if somebody breaks their deal, then whatever you agreed will happen once the deal is broken is what happens. And you remind them of the deal, and you remind them of what they agreed to, and you behave accordingly. So that's kind of an example for teeth brushing, but it's, you take that pattern that I just described for teeth brushing, and that's pretty much the pattern for most things. Bedtimes might be an exception. The bedtime thing is not a one-size-fits-all answer to that problem, because if you have a stay-at-home parent, then bedtimes might be sort of less important to you, depending on your sleep schedule, depending on how responsible the kid is on their own, how old they are, if they're old enough to be on their own. There's lots of variables there. So bedtime's a little more like if you don't have a stay-at-home parent and you're working, then obviously if the kid is on a different sleeping schedule, then that's going to cause problems. So bedtime's probably an exception, probably deserves its own video. But, if everything's aligning, then that same negotiation pattern can apply. Diet is another video probably in and of itself, because there's some really cool ways that you don't even have to negotiate for diet. And I'll make a video on that. Toy pickup is another good example. So step one, recognize the ownership of the situation. You own you, they own them. Recognize who owns the property involved in the discussion. You own the room that their toys are in. They own the toys, ostensibly. We'll make a video on property ownership, like I discussed in that Anarchapulco video later. But you should be giving your kids ownership over their toys as much as possible, because it resolves disputes, teaches them how to manage their property, care for their property, defend their property, share their property, trade their property. They can't do any of that unless they have ownership of it. And so you own the room, they own the property. They can do what they want with their property in spaces that they own. And there's so many layers to these discussions, it's kind of hard not to be a little rambly, so I apologize for that. But we have a toy room that that they sort of have ownership of, and they get to decide what happens in there. And so, you know, when we're talking about toy pickup, you know, you can do what you want with your own toys in that room. But in my room, you know, once a day, I like to have my room sort of back to being clean, let's say. And so you can have these negotiations around that, like, and it can start with accepting the ownership. Hey, this is my room. Would you like it if I, and this is the pattern of speech that you will hear 100 times a day in my house all the time. Would you like it if I just brought my stuff into your room and put it all over your floor, and then when you asked me to clean it, I just didn't? Would you like that? Like, you wouldn't have room for your stuff. You wouldn't be able to play with your stuff anymore, right? Well, no, I wouldn't like that. Well, that's the same way. This is my room, and sometimes I like to have it clean, and I like to have room for me to do stuff. And so when I ask you to clean your stuff out of my room and take it back to your room, don't you think you should do that? Well, okay, that makes sense. So that wasn't even really a negotiation. That was more of a reciprocal respect of property rights. And that goes to a lot of the interactions that you'll have. It's actually not a negotiation. It's sort of a reinforcing and a instruction on property rights. So, oh, well, you know, let's say they're fighting over a toy, like happens often with siblings, right? You know, one kid is trying to play with a toy a certain way, and the other kid's, you know, not liking how they're playing with it and wanting to play with it themselves. And so they're having a conflict. Well, guess what solves this? Property, right? You just walk up and you say, hey, I see you guys are, you know, sort of having problems with this toy. Whose toy is it? And then one of them will be like, oh, that's mine. And you'll like, well, then who gets to decide what happens with it? And the other kid's like, well, you know, they do. Okay, well, that makes sense. And if they have a problem with that, like if they respond with, but I don't want them to, you know, I know it's theirs, but I want to play with it this way, or I want to play with it instead of them. We'll be like, then you say that same sort of reciprocal two-way thing. Well, what if they want to play with something, one of your toys that you don't want them to play with? Can they just do it anyway, even though you said no? Well, no. Well, okay. Then, you know, do you think you should get to do it to her? No. Okay. It's this reciprocal back and forth, the two-way street that is rights, the two-way street that is human interaction. You can't act a certain way and then demand I don't act in that same way. That's a very basic fundamental thing that luckily little kids even understand. And so an important pattern for a lot of this stuff is just sort of calling that out and recognizing it. Making this video, I can see just how many videos need to happen to cover all the little trails that we can spider down when we're talking about this. So I think I'll leave this video there. Hopefully this was enlightening in more ways you can handle the normal everyday stuff instead of just the big, really hard, terrible stuff. Just to reiterate, you start by recognizing who owns everybody. I mean, that's kind of default at this point, right? Then you recognize who owns the property involved in a dispute. You realize who desires what and how much they desire, and that goes for yourself as well. What do you desire and how much do you desire it? You're constantly on the lookout for things that other people desire, and you are constantly looking for opportunities to negotiate for the things that other people, you know, really don't want to do that you need them to do, so that you can have productive win-win negotiations around those things. And while also not trying to turn everything into a tit-for-tat negotiation. So hopefully this video was helpful. There will absolutely be more in this category. I welcome your comments, your feedback, and your questions for follow-up videos in this area. Thanks, guys.